Studio Hire Module 7. This is an overview to all of the units. The generic title is Discussing Jobs and Work Preferences. So I'm going to take you through all of the units. They cover Theme 3, Current and Future Study and Employment. We've done quite a bit already on study. This is particularly about employment. It also touches on identity and culture, because when you're talking about jobs you like, you're often talking about your character, your personality, what you like. So that touches on that as well. It also may be that you're going to be talking about your family and what they like to do. So the point de départ is discussing jobs and work preferences. All of this, in fact a lot of this, is revision of what you've already done. But this in particular, we've done job nouns, using them, and the conditional, the fact that things change according to whether masculine or feminine. In Unit 1, so that's the point de départ, it's really revising things you've done. Unit 1, quelle orientation t'attire, will be career choices. And the grammatical point is talking about something being better or worse, or the best, the worst thing. We have done that before, comparative and superlative, and there are some ideas there. Unit 2 is introducing a new concept to you, the subjunctive. Il faut que je fasse ça. It's necessary that I should do that. And this is something which, if you're aiming for very high grades, it would be good if first of all you recognise it. You're not meant to have to know how to use it, but if you can use it, that will really assure you probably of getting very high grades. So that's going to be in the theme of both education and you and your family and friends, talking about what your hopes are, your plans and your wishes. Unit 3 will be applying for jobs, and the grammatical point, using direct objects in the perfect tense. We've used this a lot in the present tense, saying it, but we haven't done it very much in the perfect tense, so that's going to be something a little bit new. And then this is quite a short module, because the last unit, some of the units have got 6 in them, but some of the modules have got 6, it's just got 4. The last one is giving a case study, and the grammatical point is a higher level thing that, verbs, often we say that it's just followed by the infinitive. I prefer to do something, I want to do something, but there are quite a lot of verbs where you have to know that in fact you put an a or a de in front of them. So we'll be learning that when we get to module 4. And then, as with all the modules, you then get some practice in lecture, reading, écoute, listening, oral, the speaking, écrit, the writing, and then there are self-access reading and writing activities. Studio Hire Module 7, Point de départ, bon travail. Discussing jobs and work preferences. Here's the overview for this unit of the Point de départ. Point de départ is always revision. It's things that you'll have done before, probably at Key Stage 3. There's nothing new, but it's obvious that people will forget things, so it's good to revise these things. So the objective is to discuss jobs and work preferences, those two things. So we'll be looking at jobs, and we'll also be looking at the conditional bit that say I would like, or I would prefer, or I wouldn't like. To talk about jobs, you'll be looking at how to describe what your family does, what you would like, and there are all the names of the jobs that you could get, an opinion, all the opinions there, and saying why you would particularly like a certain job. Let's revise the way in which you describe jobs, and remember how they change according to whether it's a male doing the job or a female doing the job. If the word for the job, for example, mécanicien, mechanic, if it ends with ien, I-E-N, then the feminine is mécanicienne, mécanicien, mécanicienne. If it ends with eur, then it goes to euse, as in hairdresser, coiffeur, coiffeuse. If it ends with a t, eur, then it becomes trice, as in acteur, actrice, actor and actress. If it ends with e, as in boulanger, it becomes boulangère, as in a baker. If it ends with en, it becomes un, as in patron, patronne, for a boss. So here's the summary. Job nouns often change according to gender. Those are the ones I've just gone through. But the other points made are that professeur and nouns like dentiste and secrétaire, that end in E, don't have a separate feminine form, but use le if the person is male and la if the person is female. So it's fine to say la professeure, la dentiste, la secrétaire. Agent de police, police officer, médecin, doctor, and soldat, soldier, are the same for both genders. So always use le for these words. Now I say that knowing that there are French people who would wince if you said those. There are some people who feel no, that is masculine, it should always remain masculine. But before we go into talking about this in a bit more detail, will you do this exercise, which is based on the rules in the book, and then separately I'll talk to you about other opinions that people have to do with nouns. So do the exercise, and when you're ready, resume and I'll give you the answers. Okay, I hope you didn't find that too difficult, in that you've got that in front of you as to what the rules are. So here are the answers coming up, and I've colour-coded them so you can see the ones which are similar. So the ones which have no colour are the ones which are the same in masculine and feminine. Architecte, architecte. There's already an E there. Fonctionnaire, fonctionnaire, already an E, no change. Journaliste, journaliste, no change. But if it ends with ER, it becomes R. Boucher, bouchère. Caissier, caissière. Infirmier, infirmière. By the way, that one is often used to catch you out in listening tests because it sounds very similar to the word for farmer, which is fermier, fermière, but it's infirmier, and infirmière. So not fermier, and fermière. So those are those, and then TER ones become trice. So créateur de mode, créatrice de mode, directeur, directrice, facteur, factrice. And then you've got the ien words. Électricien becomes électricienne. And here we've got one which is a vendeur, so it's not a teur. Those are teurs which become trice, but if it's just a vendeur for a sales assistant becomes vendeuse. Oh, and sorry, I forgot about, this was another one with the E at the end. Vétérinaire, vétérinaire. So this book, as I say, was published in about 2015, I think. And it did give you the warning, mais attention, point culture. So here's a cultural point. Some jobs historically done by men do not have an official feminine version. But what have they done? Words like ingénieur, engineer, and maçon, builder, have often been feminised as ingénieur with an E and maçon. It's interesting, though, that female engineers often prefer to say je suis ingénieur. Possibly you could compare that with the situation with English, where actress is a word that, to be honest, is not used that much now, is it? I think that female actors, what would you use to describe someone who acts? Would you say that they were an actress or an actor? I think often people would describe themselves as actors. But since 2015, there have been other changes as well. So back in March 2019, there was this article. I've put it in English just to make it a little bit more accessible, that feminine job titles get the go-ahead in France. So you've got there, sapeur-pompier is the word for a fireman. So it's as if it's réservé aux hommes. It's as if it's reserved for men. But in fact, were already called sapeurs-pompiers. And really, they were already called that, but was that allowed, if you like? And it wasn't up until 2019 by the Académie Française. So here, this is a news article saying decades after other French-speaking countries adopted feminine names for professions, the official guardians of the language in France have also backed the change. And this was quite something. So I think I might have already spoken to you about this body called l'Académie Française, the French Academy, set up in the 17th century to protect the French language. And it really is a body which will say, yes, this is a word, no, this is not a word, you're not allowed to do that. And if you're interested, they do actually answer your questions. I go onto their website sometimes to ask them, well, is this the correct terminology, or is it allowed to say this? and you do get answers. So they've got this idea of defending the language and deciding what it is you can and can't do. Whereas I think people generally accept that English has been allowed to evolve. So our language is very different from the language of Shakespeare. You've studied Shakespeare, so you'll see that. Whereas French, although it has evolved since that time, it hasn't evolved quite as much. So anyway, getting back to this, these members of the Académie Française, they've now said they haven't got an obstacle to it. So, before this time, they actually objected to these changes as being barbaric. So here's a report which I'll just let you pause so that you can read it as well if you want to, but I'll pick up the main things that it's saying. Really, that before, just as the book had said, that often professeur can be used with la professeur, now they will accept it to have an extra E. They're not, however, going to bring out a whole list of names, male-dominated body, saying they're not going to do that. And they've pointed out that some people are already using these forms. So the comment here is made that, there are already feminine forms, but look at it, often the feminine forms are for ones where perhaps there are more women who do the job, like infirmière. And you might want to look back at the ones you've done already and think, is that the case there? They note that the definitive article, the word for the, is sometimes used to distinguish between the sexes. So you talk about Madame la juge, even though judge is normally le juge, Madame la juge, or Madame la ministre. But some will have just an extra E, so préfète, député, avocate, procureur. So to think, before there wasn't a female version of lawyer, it was avocat. Then they're allowing sapeurs pompiers instead of sapeurs pompiers. But the point has been made that in other French-speaking countries, Belgium, Switzerland, Luxembourg and Canada, they already have feminine forms for jobs. And do note that we are particularly required, quite rightly, to make sure that you're exposed to language from all of these places. So you may well see texts where they are in this format. Other points have been made there that the terms chef, of a female of the chef, écrivaine, writer, ingénieur with an E, have been used in Canada for 40 years. And a doctor in France is called un médecin. And I've always been teaching you it's masculine, always un médecin, but in Canada you can say une médecin or une docteur. But interesting this, not all feminised job titles have gone down well, and it's actually with the women themselves. So there's an author saying she didn't want to be described as an autrice. It just sounded bad. Although she liked the feminine terms for director and teacher. So it's strange about that. Interesting anomaly here because of the old rules. So a female ambassador in French was known by the male form ambassadeur. And the word ambassadrice always used to denote the ambassador's wife. It was always assumed that the ambassador was male. So interesting. And here it's interesting that there's a complaint here that the Academy had held France back for 30 years, arguing that French as a language was broadly feminised until the 17th century. So, in fact, it was it went backwards, really, from the 17th century. So I hope you found that interesting. When you study languages, I think it is more than just studying sometimes communication or culture. It is quite interesting to think about language itself. Where did it come from? Why is it different? Why do they have masculine and feminine? So it's just quite intriguing here to see language evolving this way. Page 142, exercise 2, reading. Copy and complete the sentences using the professions shown in the photos. Comptable, agriculteur, agricultrice, pompier, pompière, instituteur, institutrice, avocat, avocate, pilote. Pause, do the exercise, and then when you're ready for the answers, resume. Answers coming up now. Now, as usual, I'm going to make sure that we translate this because a lot of these sentences and these phrases you will use in your writing and your speaking about jobs. So rather than just saying, I want to be a teacher, I want to be an astronaut, you've got to be able to say why it is you want to. So this is very, very rich in phrases which you can use. J'adore la campagne. I love the countryside. Et je préférerais travailler en plein air. And I would prefer to work in the open air. En plein air. J'aimerais être, I would like to be, agriculteur ou agricultrice. Numéro 2. Voyager, c'est ma passion. Traveling is my passion. Et les avions me fascinent. And planes fascinate me. Remember a silent ENT when it's the third person of the present tense. Je crois que je serai, I think that I will be a pilote. So remember, you don't need an un or an une. It just comes out there. And look at that. These are phrases that you're going to have to use. You know, to travel is my passion. Rather than just saying I like to travel or I like travel. Voyager, c'est ma passion. Just be aware of that. Make notes of things that you can use in your own work. And this, les avions me fascinent. Rather than j'adore les avions, I love planes. Planes fascinate me. Because it's planes in the plural, that's why you've got this written in the ENT, even though it's not pronounced. Les avions me fascinent. 3. Je voudrais travailler avec des enfants. I would like to work with children. Mais pas les grands, but not the big ones. Les petits, les small ones. Je voudrais être, I would like to be, instituteur, institutrice. So that is particularly a teacher in an infant school. That you would have that, right? So for the young children, it would be an instituteur or an institutrice in the primary school. 4. Je suis forte en maths. I'm good at maths. You know this must be a female because it's got that E on the end. Et j'adore les chiffres, and I love numbers. Right, so we know words. There are 3 words: numéro, nombre, chiffre. If it's actually the figures themselves, if you could translate as figures, then use chiffre. J'aimerais travailler. I would like to work comme comptable, as an accountant. Comptable. You don't hear the M there or the P. Comptable, comptable. 5. Je suis courageux, I'm courageous. Et ce serait incroyable, and it would be incredible, de sauver la vie des gens, to save the life of people. Je veux être, I want to be, pompier, pompière, which is a fireman or a firewoman. So again, you're given reasons why you like to do something. Look at the different ways in which you're expressing that. 6. Je suis passionné par. I am passionate about. I'm excited by la loi, law et la justice and justice. Je voudrais travailler comme. I would like to work as a avocat or an avocate. So I'm fully expecting you to get full marks for that. That was not too difficult. The aim of the exercise really was to expose to you these lovely phrases, which we'll be practicing later on as well, for expressing not only what it is you would like to be or you think you're going to be or you would like to, where you'd like to work or you want to be, but also why, all of these different ways of saying it. And notice the grammar point when referring to jobs that you do or you'd like to do, you don't need the indefinite article, the a. Je voudrais être programmeur. I'd like to be a computer programmer. But I have noticed there that you do tend to use it when you qualify what sort of teacher you want to be or whatever. Page 142, exercise 3, listening. Listen and complete the table in English. So you'll hear 5 people talking about the jobs the family do, the job the speaker would like to do, and any other details. So listen through to it, write your answers, and when you're ready to see what the answers are, then resume, noticing that le frère aîné is the older brother, le frère cadet is the younger brother.
Module 7. Bon travail. Point de départ. Page 142. Exercice 3. Écoutez et complétez le tableau en anglais. 1.
Ma mère est coiffeuse et mon père est boulanger. Mais moi, je voudrais être créatrice de mode, parce que la mode me fascine. Ma mère est coiffeuse et mon père est boulanger. Mais moi, je voudrais être créatrice de mode, parce que la mode me fascine.
2.
Mon frère aîné est soldat dans l'armée, mais moi, ça ne m'intéresse pas. J'aimerais travailler comme journaliste. Mon frère aîné est soldat dans l'armée, mais moi, ça ne m'intéresse pas. J'aimerais travailler comme journaliste.
3.
Mes parents sont professeurs tous les deux. Mon père est prof d'anglais et ma mère enseigne les maths. Moi aussi, je voudrais travailler avec des enfants, mais plutôt dans une école primaire. Je veux être institutrice. Mes parents sont professeurs tous les deux. Mon père est prof d'anglais et ma mère enseigne les maths. Moi aussi, je voudrais travailler avec des enfants, mais plutôt dans une école primaire. Je veux être institutrice.
4. Mon frère cadet est mécanicien. Il adore les voitures. Mais moi, c'est la justice qui m'intéresse. Je voudrais donc travailler comme agent de police ou peut-être comme avocat. Mon frère cadet est mécanicien. Il adore les voitures. Mais moi, c'est la justice qui m'intéresse. Je voudrais donc travailler comme agent de police ou peut-être comme avocat. 5.
Avant, ma sœur était vendeuse, mais maintenant, elle est directrice de magasin à Paris. Moi, je suis surtout douée en informatique. Alors, je crois que je serai informaticienne ou programmeuse. Avant, ma sœur était vendeuse, mais maintenant, elle est directrice de magasin à Paris. Moi, je suis surtout douée en informatique. Alors, je crois que je serai informaticienne ou programmeuse.
So now let's go over the answers. We're just going to look at the transcripts, check whether or not you can translate them. And as we're going through, also harvest all of this for vocabulary and phrases that you can use to describe what your family does and what you would like to do, because that's what we're leading up to the end of this particular unit. You're going to have to write a really impressive phrase on this. So have a look at that, translate it, and when you're ready to see what it means in English, you can resume. Resume now, and there is your answer. So here, really the higher level thing is la mode me fascine, fashion fascinates me. Numéro 2, pause, can you translate that into English? And here are the answers, here's the translation. So there, ça ne m'intéresse pas, it doesn't interest me. So talking about what somebody else in your family does, but then linking it with what you think about it and what you would like to do. So it's a natural way of building up a more interesting sentence. Numéro 3, there it is, translate it. And here's the answer. So here you can see, rather than saying, my parents do that, but I don't like that and I would like to do this, here it's my parents are doing that, me too. I would like to do that, but, and then making a slight change. Mais plutôt dans une école primaire, but rather in, and that's quite good to use that, is that is another way of saying I'd prefer to do that, but I'd rather in that than somewhere else. Okay, numéro 4, translate and resume then. And here is the translation. So again, deliberately bring this in. If you've got a younger brother or an older brother, bring in that word, mon frère cadet, and then the contrast. But for me, and again, just not rather than saying I like justice, it's c'est la justice qui m'intéresse. It's justice which interests me. It's a really high, very high level phrase. And if you want to say therefore I want to do something, they like putting the donc between the I would like therefore to work. Je voudrais donc travailler as a comme agent de police ou peut-être comme avocat, and noticing you don't need the un or the une. Next one, pause and translate. So here again, there's the translation. So, deliberately bring in a tense without being asked to. Bring in a contrast, this time rather than contrast with somebody's job and what you want to do, what your relative, my sister, used to do that. Ma sœur était vendeuse, mais maintenant elle est directrice de magasin à Paris. And then emphasizing that you are particularly gifted in something, you can use that word moi. That's absolutely fine. Say moi, je suis surtout, so to contrast between her, moi, je suis surtout douée en informatique. Right, and instead of saying I want to be or I'm going to be, I believe that I will be. Je crois que je serai. Now, finally, this gives you the summary of the sorts of things that you've probably written, so you could give yourself a few ticks as to what you managed to get without being told what the answers were. Page 143, exercise 5, listening. Here you've got a quiz. You'll hear two people talking about their answers and what their answers would be. So you've got to say for Clara and Noah, which answers do they give? You will find this dead easy. It really is easy. But the main thing is to remind you and present to you language each you can use when you're talking about what sort of job you would like to do. So you can see that all of these are conditional. Voudrais-tu? Would you like to? Préférerais-tu? Would you prefer? Aimerais-tu? Would you love better to work? Voudrais? Would you like? Préférerais? Would you prefer? And are you rather? In which way? What's your character like? So listen to it, but in particular think about phrases you think, yeah, I could use that.
Page 143. Exercice 5. Écoutez et lisez le quiz. Notez les réponses de Clara et de Noah. 1.
On fait ce quiz, Clara?
Oui, si tu veux.
Alors, première question. Voudrais-tu travailler? A. Dans un bureau. B. Dans un magasin. Ou C. En plein air.
Moi, j'aimerais travailler dans un magasin. Et toi?
Je ne voudrais pas être enfermé dans un bureau. Je préférerais travailler en plein air. On fait ce quiz, Clara?
Oui, si tu veux.
Alors, première question. Voudrais-tu travailler? A. Dans un bureau. B. Dans un magasin. Ou C. En plein air.
Moi, j'aimerais travailler dans un magasin. Et toi?
Je ne voudrais pas être enfermé dans un bureau. Je préférerais travailler en plein air.
2.
Question suivante. Préférerais-tu faire un métier A. Créatif. B. Manuel. Ou C. À responsabilité.
Je crois que je préférerais faire un métier créatif.
Pas moi. Je préférerais faire un métier manuel. Question suivante. Préférerais-tu faire un métier A. Créatif. B. Manuel. Ou C. À responsabilité.
Je crois que je préférerais faire un métier créatif.
Pas moi. Je préférerais faire un métier manuel.
3.
Troisième question. Aimerais-tu mieux travailler? A. Seul. B. En équipe. Ou C. Dans une grande entreprise.
Ça, c'est difficile. Je pense que j'aimerais mieux travailler en équipe.
Et moi, j'aimerais mieux travailler seul, je crois. Troisième question. Aimerais-tu mieux travailler? A. Seul. B. En équipe. Ou C. Dans une grande entreprise.
Ça, c'est difficile. Je pense que j'aimerais mieux travailler en équipe.
Et moi, j'aimerais mieux travailler seul, je crois.
4.
Question numéro 4. Voudrais-tu travailler avec A. Des animaux. B. Des enfants. Ou C. Des ordinateurs.
Surtout pas avec des enfants. Je ne suis pas très patiente. Alors je dirais avec des ordinateurs.
Moi, j'aimerais bien travailler avec des animaux. Question numéro 4. Voudrais-tu travailler avec A. Des animaux, B. Des enfants ou C. Des ordinateurs?
Surtout pas avec des enfants. Je ne suis pas très patiente. Alors je dirais avec des ordinateurs.
Moi, j'aimerais bien travailler avec des animaux.
5.
5e question. Préférerais-tu A. Travailler à l'étranger, B. Rester dans ton propre pays ou C. Travailler de chez toi?
Un jour, je voudrais bien travailler à l'étranger, peut-être en Angleterre ou en Italie. Et toi?
Je déteste voyager. Je préférerais rester ici, en France. 5e question. Préférerais-tu A. Travailler à l'étranger, B. Rester dans ton propre pays ou C. Travailler de chez toi?
Un jour, je voudrais bien travailler à l'étranger, peut-être en Angleterre ou en Italie. Et toi?
Je déteste voyager. Je préférerais rester ici, en France.
6.
Dernière question. Es-tu plutôt A. Ambitieuse et motivée, B. Intelligente et sérieuse ou C. Organisée et travailleuse?
Oh là là! Quelle question! Bon, je crois que je suis plutôt ambitieuse et motivée.
Alors moi, je crois que je suis assez organisée et travailleur. Dernière question. Es-tu plutôt A. Ambitieuse et motivée, B. Intelligente et sérieuse ou C. Organisée et travailleuse?
Oh là là! Quelle question! Bon, je crois que je suis plutôt ambitieuse et motivée.
Alors moi, je crois que je suis assez organisée et travailleur.
Answers coming up now. Now, you shouldn't find it at all difficult to get with what they said. I particularly, though, want you to look at the ways in which they say these things, because when you're in the speaking test or when you're writing, you need to show variety of ways of saying things. So here, in answer to that first question, moi j'aimerais, I would like to travailler dans un magasin. By the way, remember that I always translate everything using Google Translate, and then I just highlight the bit that I changed. So you can see the only thing I had to change here was that in English we tend to use shop rather than store. And she goes beyond that, and this is what you're going to have to do when you're going to say what you want to do, to give a justification. That's always the thing that gives you the high marks. And look at this, je ne voudrais pas. So to say what it was, why she wants to do that is because she wouldn't like something else. Je ne voudrais pas être enfermée. I wouldn't want to be locked in an office, so closed in an office. Je préférerais, I would prefer, to work en plein air, outdoors. And you'll have really, they deliberately are giving lots of conditionals here because that is something which is, again, going to give you higher points if you can say that. So numéro 2, there she hesitates. Je crois que. And again, that's good in a speaking. Makes it sound a bit more natural. While you're thinking, je crois que, I think that, je préférerais. And it's je préférerais. There are 4 syllables there. Préférerais. Take your time when you're saying it. And then he contrasts par moi, not me. 3, ça c'est difficile. So that's always a good, when someone asks you a question, you don't have to answer. It's unnatural to immediately always answer. So know how to say, that's difficult. Ça c'est difficile. Ça c'est difficile. And then, you don't have to be definite about anything, do you? And in fact, in French, you get higher marks if you're not so definite. If you think, I think that, I believe that. That's actually better than just saying, I want to do this. Je pense que j'aimerais mieux travailler en équipe. Et moi, j'aimerais mieux travailler seul. Je crois. Again, I think. Je pense, I believe. I think, je crois, I believe. Both can be translated as I think. 4. And here, again, giving surtout pas avec des enfants, especially not with children. And giving a reason why, because of her characteristic, je ne suis pas très patiente. So again, remember, use the negative sometimes. Show off, I know how to say the negative. This is good. Alors, je dirais, and they use that an awful lot. So, I would say, je dirais. It's more straightforward. Number 5. So yeah, one day I'd like to. Un jour, je voudrais bien. I'd like to. So je voudrais bien. I'd really like to work abroad. Peut-être, perhaps. So again, not definite. Use the word peut-être. That comes from pouvoir, is able, être, to be. So maybe, can be. And that one's more straightforward. Je déteste voyager. 6. This is a good response. Oh là là, quelle question. Oh là là. Oh dear. They really do say that in France. Oh là là, quelle question. What a question. Bon, right. So again, these bits, these phrases which buy you time and hesitate and sound so French. Oh là là, quelle question. Bon, je crois que je serais plutôt. I think and that's often translated in Google by I'm pretty ambitious, and that's fine. It means rather, as in the sense of, quite more that than something else. I'm pretty ambitious. So rather than not being ambitious, I'm pretty ambitious. Plutôt ambitieuse et motivée. And then contrasting. Alors moi, je crois que, I believe that, je suis assez organisée et travailleuse. And you can see why this unit covers theme 1 as well. Do you remember right back at the beginning we talked about what your characteristics were? And here it's being applied to the situation of the workplace. So if you need it, here are the answers for each of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Page 143, exercise 6, listening. Écoutez la suite, listen to the rest of the conversation. Selon les résultats du quiz, according to the results of the quiz, quels seraient les métiers parfaits pour Noah et Clara? What would be the ideal jobs? By the way, they do have the word un job. You can say that, or un emploi. They both sound quite like the English. But un métier also means a job. So make sure you know that word and don't mix it up with matière. Une matière, you know from the previous unit, is a subject that you do. Un métier is a job. Right.
Page 143. Exercice 6. Écoutez la suite. Selon les résultats du quiz, quels seraient les métiers parfaits pour Noah et Clara?
Regardons les résultats. Toi, tu voudrais travailler en plein air, faire un métier manuel, travailler avec des animaux et rester en France. Tu es organisé et travailleur. Quel métier serait parfait pour toi?
Voyons. Alors, selon le quiz, le métier parfait pour moi serait agriculteur.
Et moi, j'aimerais travailler dans un magasin, faire un métier créatif, travailler en équipe, travailler avec des ordinateurs et peut-être travailler à l'étranger. Et je suis plutôt ambitieuse et motivée. Quel métier est-ce qu'on me recommande?
Selon le quiz, le métier parfait pour toi serait directrice de magasin de vêtements.
C'est ridicule! Je ne m'intéresse pas du tout à la mode.
Et moi, je n'aimerais pas du tout travailler dans une ferme.
So hopefully you got the message there. Here's the transcript. Regardons, let us look. Remember, if you take the new form of the present tense, it means let us do something. Écoutons, let's listen. Bavardons, let's chat. Regardons, let's look at les résultats, results. And then stressing you. So in French, they can't say you do that. They've got to put in an extra word, tu. Toi, tu voudrais travailler, and then it's all these things. Voyons, let's see, let's look at, let's see. Alors, so, selon le quiz, according to the quiz, le métier parfait pour moi serait agriculteur. So, a farmer would be the job, working on the land. And here they summarise what they've said they wanted to do. So, selon le quiz, le métier parfait, the ideal job, the perfect job pour toi serait, would be directrice de magasin de vêtements, a clothing store manager. And what's their response? C'est ridicule, it's ridiculous. Je ne m'intéresse pas du tout à la mode. I'm not interested in fashion at all. Do you remember that? Je ne m'intéresse pas à something. And they've added the je ne m'intéresse pas du tout, not at all. Et moi, je n'aimerais pas du tout travailler dans une ferme. I wouldn't like to work at all in a farm. So that pas du tout, not at all. Make sure that you know that expression. Pas du tout, not just pas, but pas du tout, not at all, pas du tout. It's good to take time on pronunciation. Could you now listen carefully to this when it's pronounced in French? I will put a pause, and please will you say it in French before you then hear the English translation. Really ham up your accent.
Les professions.
Jobs.
Ma mère, mon père est.
My mum is an. My dad is an.
Je voudrais être.
I would like to be an
Acteur, actrice.
actor, actress,
Agent de police.
policeman, policewoman,
Agriculteur, agricultrice.
farmer,
Architecte.
architect,
Boucher, bouchère.
butcher,
Boulanger, boulangère.
baker,
Caissier, caissière.
cashier,
Coiffeur, coiffeuse.
hairdresser,
Créateur, créatrice de mode.
fashion designer,
Dentiste.
dentist,
Directeur, directrice.
director,
Électricien, électricienne.
electrician,
Employé de bureau.
office worker,
Facteur, factrice.
postman, postwoman,
Fonctionnaire.
civil servant,
Infirmier, infirmière.
nurse,
Informaticien, informaticienne.
computer scientist,
Ingénieur.
engineer,
Journaliste.
journalist,
Maçon, maçonne.
builder,
Mécanicien, mécanicienne.
mechanic,
Médecin.
doctor,
Professeur.
teacher,
Secrétaire.
secretary,
Serveur, serveuse.
waiter, waitress,
Soldat.
soldier,
Steward, hôtesse de l'air.
flight attendant,
Vendeur, vendeuse.
sales assistant,
Vétérinaire.
vet.
J'adore la campagne.
I love the countryside.
Je suis passionné par la loi et la justice.
I'm passionate about the law and justice.
Je suis fort, forte en maths.
I'm good at maths.
Je suis courageux, courageuse.
I am brave.
Voyager, c'est ma passion.
Traveling is my passion.
Les avions me fascinent.
Planes fascinate me.
Je préférerais travailler en plein air.
I would prefer to work outdoors.
Je voudrais travailler avec des enfants.
I would like to work with children.
J'aimerais travailler comme.
I would like to work as.
Je veux être.
I want to be.
Page 143, exercise 7, speaking. Now you've heard this being said on the audio. Now you say it aloud. Whether you're on your own or whether you're with somebody else, can you just practice asking the question and answering it? You will have to ask questions in the speaking. You'll always get credit for being able to ask questions. So, alors, première question, first question. Voudrais-tu travailler, as it's got there? So there's no problem. And then it's obvious you answer, je voudrais. And here there's a reminder about what everything means. I would deliberately wait until the end of the unit before you do the speaking in, which is page 143, exercise 4, because by now, because you've done quite a lot more listening, you'll be able to add more detail to your answers to these questions. So, à deux, in twos. Parlez de votre famille, talk about your family, et du métier que vous voudriez faire, and of the job you'd like to do. So you've learned an awful lot to be able to begin with ma mère est secrétaire, my mother's a secretary, mais moi, but je voudrais être journaliste. I'd like to be a journalist. Pourquoi? Give lots of details. Why? Parce que je suis fort, because I'm good, or je suis doué, I'm gifted en anglais in a subject, et parce que j'aime écrire des articles, and I like to write articles. And then ask them, et toi, qu'est-ce que tu voudrais faire? So can you deliberately use all the vocabulary and phrases you've learned in the unit? I've put together this substitution table to help you here. And this is often what you have to do in answer to a question. It may be that you know loads of French, but if you don't know how to think on your feet and make sure that you know how to develop it, then you're not going to show your best. So always think, how am I going to develop it? And here they've got a structure. So to say what your relative is, and then contrast, but me, I'd like to be that. Or it could be the contrast, me too. The opposite of a contrast, but I as well, I'd like to do that. But then you think in answers to the reason why, and they've given you a structure. You can say what you're good at, what subject you're good at, and what you like to do. So I've drawn from all of the unit the sorts of things that you might want to say. And here's an extra. You could say, instead of just saying I like fashion, I like justice, say that whatever it is, me fascine, fascinates me, m'intéresse, interests me, or ne m'intéresse pas, ne me fascine pas. Okay? If it's plural, they sound exactly the same, but you're written with an ENT. Les voitures me fascinent. Les enfants m'intéressent. Les animaux ne m'intéressent pas, etc. And you could finish off with a ce serait bien, ce serait super, ce serait parfait, ce serait affreux pour moi. So in your answers, I'd like you to write down what would you have as an answer to this, but deliberately using lots of these phrases. Page 143, exercise 8, the writing. Qu'est-ce que vous voudriez et ne voudriez pas faire comme travail? What would you like to and not like to do as work? Écrivez un court paragraphe, write a short paragraph. Donnez des raisons, give the reasons. This is the sort of thing that you may well get in GCSE. As usual, I do not want you to just put something into Google and provide something which is Google Translate. I think Google is fantastic, but it's not a good way of me being able to see what you can and can't do. So can you make sure when you're writing it, you deliberately use the structures revised in this unit? You've spent a long time looking at it, use them. And you can refer to the substitution table and transcripts that I've given you. So I want you must, whatever you do, you must use these phrases. Je voudrais, je n'aimerais pas, ce serait parce que, plutôt doué. So you must use those. And if you want to impress me even more, here are optional extras. Je préférerais, and something fascinates you, interests you, or doesn't interest you. Me fascine, m'intéresse, m'intéresse, ne m'intéresse pas, ne m'intéresse pas. And here's a reminder of the substitution table that you've already got and to which you can refer, as well as the transcripts. Things which you've learnt in this unit will help you for a lot of questions under the theme of theme 3. Could you now, though, make sure that you've got an answer now written into your booklet for theme 3, where you've got the question, Qu'est-ce que tes parents font comme travail? What do your parents do in the way of work, as work? For here's an example, mon père est professeur et ma mère est directrice d'un magasin. And I've made it a little bit better by saying avant, elle était vendeuse dans un autre magasin, before she was a saleswoman in another. shop. But in fact, within this unit, you've got much more that you could say, because you can contrast it with what you'd like to do and why.